All right, so we have started the recording, and again, today we're just going to go over time and effort updates as it relates to the process and what you can expect this upcoming cycle. We've made a few improvements based on feedback we've gotten, so we just wanted to kind of catch everyone up. So we're going to talk about new features in My Workplace, the email notification that you can expect for this cycle, some additional options that you have as it relates to printing reports. And we're also going to talk about a new ERN code for just overpayments that will be implemented in the next upcoming cycle, but we wanted to go ahead and let you guys know what was going on now. So as you see it, or if you see it, you're aware of what's going on. And then we're also just going to briefly go over some cost transfer policy updates. This is it's just a repeat of information that's already been given previously, but I figured given it's time and effort reporting, it would be a great opportunity for any new people that's joined us to just get those updates, along with retro form updates as well. And then I'll tell you where you can find additional resources if you need them. So first things first, I don't know if you have noticed yet, we haven't created the new reports for this. The next reporting cycle will be January through June of 2021. And once I create the reports, I don't know if you've noticed this tile, or maybe the tile won't appear until I actually run reports and you have some outstanding out there for you. But under My Workplace now, you will see a business manager time and effort report tile that will give you a breakdown of how old the reports are. And you'll still have the standard grant time and effort if you tile as well. If you prefer using that, you can certainly access the forms here, but you'll also have a new tile that will break down information as relates to aging and pending forms, things of that nature. So it's very similar. It will work very similar to the pending approvals for EPAFs and other e-forms. So hopefully it's not too new for most of you that have to deal with this. So when you click on that tile, this is what it will look like. You'll notice that you have the ability to view how many forms you have total, and it'll break it down by age group, meaning how old is the form since it's been created. If you have multiple reporting periods that you're working on, you'll also be able to sort by those. So like I mentioned, January through June of 2021 will be our next cycle. And, you know, thankfully, thanks to all y'all's hard work, we finally wrapped up the previous reporting cycle. So thank you all. And so you should really only see one, but let's say you have some recertifications or things of that nature, it'll be really easy to identify those. So for example, if, you know, an erroneous charge is removed after the fact for the previous reporting cycle, and we have to issue a new report, an updated report, you might see more than one reporting period listed here, but it should stick out really quickly. You can also filter and organize the forms by the home department of the employee. And then down here, you have all of the pertinent information. I do want to highlight that this box or this area is limited to 100 rows, so you won't see more than 100 rows of data at a time, but it'll list the form ID, the reporting period, the IMPL ID, as well as their name and home department. And then it'll tell you, you know, how are they categorized. Another great feature about this, as with any great dashboards, you'll have the ability to take actions directly from this screen. So you can go directly to update a grant form, which means you can review it and release it to approvals, or you can use the view grant report option, and that allows you to view it only. And I just wanted to remind everyone that this is a great feature. You know, if you've already kicked it off to approvals and the report's in pending status, this is a great tool to use to see where it is in the approval process, should you need to go back and look. You know, is it stuck with the employee? Is it stuck with a PI or a supervisor? Is the report in error because maybe the supervisor is no longer active and the paperwork hasn't been submitted to update that information yet? So this is a great tool. The view grant report option is a great tool to use to find that information because you can view it from that point. So the email notification that you can expect this time will be from the GFM eCert mailbox. It will be automatically generated and it'll be notifying you basically what this says right here. Good morning or good afternoon. We just wanted to let you know that we've created grant time and effort forms for the current reporting. period, and they're ready for your processing. And then it'll give you a link to log directly into My Workplace to process the forms. And of course, if you ever have questions or need help, the GFM eCert mailbox is the perfect place to reach out to. Another thing that we've implemented for this cycle is that now you have the option to print reports with comments or without comments displayed. So for any reason, should you want to print and keep a copy for yourself and you want to see what comments were placed on it, you can print with them or without them. So if you want the reports with comments, you'll select the grant time and effort with comments from the print option, and it will generate the report with the comments included. So as I mentioned in the beginning, we do have a new earnings code that's been created. It's called OVP, and this is for anytime the individual or an employee is accidentally overpaid. Let's say they received a duplicate summer payment or something of that nature. And so, you know, for any of you that's dealt with this, what ends up happening is the time and effort report pulls in those earnings codes, including the overpayment, and it can cause the percentages to be skewed, even though the employee's paid it back or is on a payment plan. So starting 7/15, overpayments are going to be used using the OVP. They're going to be coded with this earnings code. And this earnings code will be excluded from effort reporting so that all of the percentages calculate correctly. I do want to highlight that this will be for the upcoming reporting cycle, or the next one. So July through December, overpayments will be excluded, and it shouldn't cause any issues with the effort percentages calculated. But for the current one, because we didn't start this until July with the new fiscal year, the current reporting period that we're about to release, so January through June, you're still going to see those. So you will need to use the comment section to document as necessary and as applicable for those situations if you have any. And then I did want to take just a few seconds, you know, whenever we have so many people gathered together, it's just really great time to just go over important regulations to know. Uniform Guidance 2 CFR 200 is the Code of Federal Regulations that guide everything that we do as it relates to regulating federal awards. So this is the link to it, and you'll see specific sections that we're going to go over here in a second. But it's also really important to know any agency-specific guidance, you know, depending on where your sponsor, who your sponsor is and where you're getting the funding from. And I do just want to take a second to highlight that even if you don't receive federal funds, a lot of times non-federal grants will commonly place references to uniform guidance or audit requirements, things of that nature, basically making them subject to the same rules. So the one that I really just wanted to foot stomp for a second is section 200.302, where it talks about internal controls. And so basically uniform guidance says, hey, USC, because you're getting federal funds, we expect you to establish and maintain effective internal control over that award and provide reasonable assurance that it's being managed in compliance with uniform guidance and the other applicable regulations. So basically they expect charges to post correctly the first time, and that anytime they don't, that we take prompt action whenever we identify those. And of course, you know, section 403 talks about factors affecting allowability of cost. So of course it has to be necessary and reasonable, conform to any limitation or exclusions set forth by the award, and be consistent with policies and procedures that apply both to federally financed activities and others. So we can't have special rules for grant funding that are different from our university rules. So for example, bonuses, additional compensation, things of that nature. And then section 451 specifically states that access over cost can't be transferred to another grant or another award, regardless. It's just, so in other words, you know, you cannot simply move expenses or spend out a grant or move overages from one grant to another. So if you've accidentally overspent one award, you can't take that overage and arbitrarily post it to another federal grant. And then I did want to hit home applicable credits real quick. That's section 406. So anytime you discover an erroneous charge has been placed on a grant or an award, the timeliness rule does not apply. 406 specifically states that the charge needs to be removed and the credit applied as needed and as soon as it's identified. So even if the project is closed and it's a year later and you identify, oh, this person was never supposed to be charged here, like there's no time frame for correcting that. It has to come off. By law, we're required to remove it and give the sponsor their credit. Remember, Uncle Sam always wants the credit. Don't we all, right? We always want a refund if it's due. However, you know, based on the cost transfer policy and things of that nature, depending on how long it takes to identify that error, you may or may not be able to actually place it where the charge should be. So just kind of keep that in mind. And then just some examples of agency specific guidance. For example, HHS, they get even more prescriptive in what they say, more prescriptive than uniform guidance, where they say, you know, cost transfers by recipients between grants, where there's a mean to compensate for overruns or other reasons, are unallowable. And they even go on to say no later than 90 days following occurrence. And so, of course, date of occurrence is the date of the original charge. And then they go on to say an explanation merely stating that the transfer was made to correct an error or to transfer to correct project is not sufficient. So they're basically saying we need more information. We need justification. And then NIH does the very same thing. You know, they say basically the same thing as HHS. So just remember, parking charges or transferring overages are unallowable. And this is, all of these things kind of led us to formally documenting these with the cost transfer policy. So that's policy FINA 3.35. And again, a cost transfer is a reassignment or transfer of charges between accounts. And that's whether it's a direct charge or cost share. So starting 415, some of you, if you've been on previous webinars, you'll already know this, but for anyone that's new that may not, I just wanted to take a minute to go over it. So cost transfers, starting this past April, any cost transfer, including a retro funding change, must have a cost transfer justification form attached if they impact sponsored awards. This form will replace the need for any memos that you were otherwise using. And the purpose of the form is just to protect all vested parties. It ensures the PI had the opportunity to review and approve it prior to the expense being moved, and that there's proper documentation attached to it to avoid audit findings. You know, I say this all the time. It's not a matter of if we're going to be audited, it's just a matter of when. And it can come from any source. It can come from the sponsor, you know, NIH can come, NSF can come. We have an external audit every year. So proper documentation really is absolutely necessary to justify any cost transfer. Because as you know, people leave, people move. So if it's the justification is sitting in someone's email box from a year ago and that person's moved on, we'll no longer have access to it. So if we don't properly document it at the point that it's requested, it really can come back and kind of bite us in an actual audit circumstance. So for those that haven't seen the cost transfer justification form, this is what it looks like, and you can find it on the Controller's Office website under Grants and Funds Management, and I've also included a link here. And this will be posted online, but it basically asks, you know, what type of cost transfer is this? And then please answer these 3 questions. And then the one thing that I want to highlight is that it does require PI signature and approval. Because as you know, they end up ultimately being the person that has to answer to the sponsor should something become unallowable or things of that nature. So we always want them to be in the loop. And then if you haven't noticed, we did try to simplify the payroll retro funding change form. The old form, you know, asked for the ID, the name, the IMPL record, the home department, the department name. But now you'll notice all you need is their USC ID and their name, because, you know, we can look up all the other pertinent information. So we did try to make it a little bit easier, and the updated form can be found on the controller's website as well. So just some cost transfers that may be allowable. There are 3 prerequisites that we consider. Obviously, the first one is the cost transfer must provide a direct benefit to the project that you're wishing to charge, and it must comply with both the university policies and sponsors' terms and conditions. And then obviously the cost transfer must be fully documented, and that's using the cost transfer justification form. Other factors such as timing may affect allowability. So some common ones that may be allowable are, if we need to correct an error due to untimely receipt of information by the university. So we got the notice of award really late. So obviously that's going to cause us to initiate some cost transfers sometimes. If we need to reallocate effort based on actual effort, if we need to move pre-award cost, correctly allocate benefits, benefiting more than one project. So what we're talking about here is if, let's say you bought a large piece of equipment that is, servicing or providing benefits to 2 awards. So, and you accidentally only charged it to 1. So obviously we want to make sure we correctly allocate that cost 50-50 to each. So that would be an example of a cost transfer that would be allowable. And then of course we always need to remove any unallowable charges or out of period cost. But some cost transfers that are not allowable under any circumstances are the following. So any cost transfer to correct deficiencies caused by overruns or other funding considerations. So we're talking about overages here. To avoid restrictions imposed by law or by the terms of the sponsored project. So for example, if one award allows tuition and another award doesn't, you can't just arbitrarily charge all your students to the one project that does, even though they're working on the other project. We're not allowed to park expenses, knowing that they're going to be transferred elsewhere after the fact, and that's including competing or non-competing continuations of the same project. So this is where risk accounts become really important so that we can have the charges posted to the proper account up front. And then, of course, to transfer costs to a sponsored project merely because there are unexpended funds available. So, for example, if you get towards the end of award, you realize you still have $10,000 you haven't spent of that. You can't just, let me buy, 2 laptops or let me buy this piece of equipment just to spend out the award. Auditors do specifically look at that. They look very heavily for that, spending out awards and making sure that the project being charged is able to receive relative benefit. So large purchases like that or anything that appears to be spending out the award, like I said, they do target. And then, of course, timing of a cost transfer. It should be processed as quickly as possible as soon as you discover the error. And if we should approve it and it be allowable, it can affect other factors, such as, if there's a financial report due or a carry forward request or a final invoice. Depending on all the timing and how that relates, it could cause some delays. And please note that cost transfers which remove expenditures from sponsored projects, as I mentioned previously, are not subject to a time limit. They have to be prepared at any time that it's determined that, a project was charged incorrectly. So here's where you can go to find resources if you haven't been to our website. It's the Office of the Controller, and then it's Grants and Funds Management. And then down here, this is where we post copies of all our webinars and all our training. If you hit Expand All, you'll usually find a link that will take you to the PDF version of the PowerPoint, along with the recording of the webinar and any training aids that we provided. So it's a great resource if you haven't been out here to explore. I highly encourage you to do so. And with that, I'm going to open it up to questions for you guys. And I'll give everyone a couple of minutes to see if there are any questions. We're excited for the next time and effort reporting cycle. Hopefully you find the dashboard useful. And the ability to print reports with or without comments will hopefully be another feature that everyone likes. And we're really excited for, implementation of the OVP for the next July through December reporting cycle, because I know that's been a headache for quite a few people. Well, I'm not seeing any questions. Well, I just want to say I appreciate your time. I appreciate all your hard work. I know there are a lot of time and effort reports that are created, and I just appreciate your dedication in comparing them to HCM distribution and making sure that, you know, everything is good. With that, I will wish you all a great afternoon, and hopefully it's lunchtime for some people. And like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to the GFM eCert at mailbox.sc.edu website or email address. And currently, for those of you that want to know when you can expect the effort reports, you should probably expect them the first week of August, because we usually like to give people a pay period or two to remove any out-of-period payroll or do any needed last-minute adjustments. So you should see those by the first week of August. All right, thank you, everyone.